Well, this is sounding pretty good. I'm thinking about replacing my USB interface with my mobile one. I'm not sure why. I guess I
Okay.
guess I've been a little spooked ever since I heard the story of Federico's burning up that one day,
Oh
because
yeah.
we have the
Yeah.
same one, and so I don't know, and I guess I could clear desk space a little bit too if I go to the mobile one, because I have one of these Zoom thingamabobbers, Zoom H6, which can take
Sure. Yeah.
XLR mics. But I don't know. I'm in that. You know what, Rob? I am in that place where it's quieter at Mac Stories, and so I'm starting to do some experimentation, switching up the studio a little bit, moving things around, trying to make it more. I don't know.
So I'm like, it doesn't sound very productive.
No, well, it is and it isn't. But I'm contemplating things that will let me work on new projects, perhaps. So we'll see. I don't know. It's some of it's just moving things around because I don't feel like doing anything else today, and other aspects of it might actually turn into something cool down the road. But I am getting out of the basement more now that I have my iPad Pro and can work on that.
Oh, don't! You'll make me jealous.
It's pretty nice. It feels really solid. It's funny. It feels far less breakable than my MacBook Pro, my 13-inch MacBook Pro, because every time I open that, I look to the sky and I see if there's a dust particle falling that's going to jam up my keyboard.
Yeah, it's a bit weird that you and I do as well. Sort of live our lives worrying about dust
Yeah,
on our $2, $3, $4, $5,000 laptops, depending on what model you buy.
I know
Dust really shouldn't be the
no,
enemy.
the worry is real too. I mean, usually I work with my MacBook Pro in clamshell mode with all sorts of wires coming out of it, and that was one of those things where I was like, oh, this is not the way you're supposed to use a MacBook Pro, right? It's supposed to be, at least some of the time, be portable, and that got me to thinking. This is one of those things where you sit down and you think, how are ways that I can spend many thousands of dollars very quickly? And one of them is, well, to really make that laptop portable, I could just get a really high-end Mac Mini that would be actually faster than the MacBook Pro, because it's a 2016 MacBook Pro. And you can spec out a Mini now, so it's competitive with an iMac Pro. I like to have lots of tabs open too. So I thought, I'll juice up the RAM a little bit so I can have 100 tabs open at any one given time, and none of them are kind of, instead of fixing me, I can throw money at the problem and have a computer that can handle having 100 tabs open at once in Safari. But ultimately, I decided not to do that. Not long after my iPad Pro came last week, because I had forgotten, really. It had been months since I worked on an iPad Pro after I accidentally destroyed mine, and I forgot how nice it was to work on. I mean, I have the Smart Keyboard Folio, which I actually kind of like. Federico wrote about that on Mac Stories recently. He does not like it. I can see why he doesn't like it. I have some of the same gripes, like the lack of special iOS keys and media keys and that kind of thing. But unlike him, I have tinier hands, and they're really like little claws of a dinosaur, because I just sit here not doing much of anything every day except for typing. And so I type away on that little keyboard, and it's totally fine, and I find it comfortable, and I like it. The other thing I sometimes do is I'll put it in a stand, and then use like the Bluetooth Magic Keyboard, which I like too. So that got me out of the basement today, for instance, where it's cold, sitting up in the kitchen, just doing some writing, and I don't know, gets me out and about. So I took it down to Chicago yesterday with me. Used the Magic Keyboard Folio for that. It's a really solid machine. It's not much different than an old iPad in the sense that iOS hasn't changed for it. Hopefully that will happen with iOS 13. But boy, it sure is fast, and it sure does work well for what it is. I just hope that the software starts catching up with the remarkable hardware.
Yeah, I mean, aside from the actual software, because I don't use it, or hardly ever use it even on my phone.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, you're totally right. Like the look of it is incredible, and I've watched a couple of reviews, and it just looks so good. And the little pencil charging
that's
thing,
really
and the
cool.
little keyboard case folio thing. I want it all, and I can't have any of it because I cannot spend that much money on a computer that I will not use.
It's very expensive, and I find the expense debate interesting because I think people who think of it as a big iPhone or an iOS device first feel that it's really expensive, and people who think of it as a computer think of it as, well, yeah, it's expensive, but it's competitive when you look at it in terms of the power compared to like an MacBook Pro, right? I mean, it is really expensive still. That is true, and like that folio case, the keyboard folio case is $200. That's a lot, but yeah, I like it a lot. I have in my Tom Bin backpack, I have a little sleeve for my 13-inch MacBook Pro, and the iPad Pro fits in it perfectly, though not with the pencil attached, which is kind of too bad. It's just a little bit too wide to do that and fit it in there. The old iPad Pro from 2015, that when it had the keyboard cover on it, it wouldn't fit in there because it was just too deep, just too wide. The bezels just made it just big enough that it wouldn't fit in there. And this new one, it fits in there really snugly. It's almost exactly the same size as the MacBook Pro, but it just feels, I think maybe because it's not curved and the sides are, the sides and the edges are all flat, it just feels a lot thinner than I think it really is, even with the keyboard cover on. And that's kind of cool. I mean, it's heavy and it's solid, and it just, it's the design of it is really pretty neat. Of course, like the old ones, and I think this is because of a coating that they use for the pencil to work properly. It is a fingerprint magnet, and that I use a lot of keyboard shortcuts when I'm working on a keyboard. But if you do any amount of touching of the screen, which inevitably you do because it is a touch device after all, it gets grimy pretty easily. And the new folio case doesn't have, the old Smart Keyboard cover had like a microfiber inside to it that rubbed against the screen. When you carried it around, it kind of cleaned it off a little bit. Whereas now it's just those cloth keys that are there. So it doesn't have the ability to clean itself, and you have to just kind of wipe it down every so often.
Yeah, I've seen some pretty disgusting pictures of the screen on Twitter, and I think a couple of reviews. Like, for something that it's designed for people to touch it with their filthy, grubby hands, it's pretty bad at picking up fingerprints. I mean, I guess you could carry around some hand wipes all day, and every time you want to touch it, you clean your hands and hope that none of the oils come off. But I imagine they're going to improve that over the next 4, 5, 6, 10 years or something.
I hope so.
But yeah, right now it's not great.
Yeah, I hope so. Although it has not, I don't think it has improved since the original one at all. And I think it is due to the pencil somehow, because I believe there's some kind of coating on there to give you enough friction so the pencil doesn't feel slippery on the surface. And I think that's part of the problem. Right. It doesn't have the same kind of coating that they put on the phones, and to make them, I guess, somewhat, fingerprint resistant. And that, it doesn't take much. I mean, I took a picture today and sent of my setup and sent it to a couple people. And I looked at the picture and I was like, it really shows up in photographs, even more so than when you're using it. And I was like, oh, it just looks like I ate my lunch on that thing. when it really wasn't that bad. I mean, there was a handful of fingerprints up in the corner from doing something, but when I took a picture of it and it caught the light, it really looked pretty awful. But yeah, I'm happy with it so far, and I'm really down to the point where there are only a couple of things that I do that I really need to be on a Mac for, and including things like right now while we're recording, but that's okay. And then things like, if you use Xcode or you use Logic or Final Cut, any of those kind of pro apps that have a timeline associated or just a lot of text or tools, a big screen is pretty nice. So I do, even when you can do things like you can use Ferrite to edit a podcast on on an iPad, I still do prefer my 27-inch display for doing certain things, and I'll probably stick to that. But I do really feel like I'm going to spend more time on the iPad Pro going forward, which is one of the reasons I didn't end up getting that mini. I thought, well, I have an older mini that's like a 2014, and it really doesn't do anything that requires any real heavy-duty work, and it runs Mojave, so I'm just going to stick with that. I've got my MacBook Pro 13-inch. It's still perfectly good, and it mostly stays out of the dust since it's in clamshell mode, and I can take it with me when I need to do those things, those handful of things on the road. I'm looking at you, MailChimp, once again. I like to complain about MailChimp whenever I can, Rob. I'm sure you've noticed.
Oh, yeah, of course you do. I mean, would it even be an episode of a podcast if you didn't?
No, because, I just feel like web apps, I shouldn't lay it all at their feet, but I feel like they don't even try. On the other hand, mobile Safari needs to be a little more desktop-like, I think, in order to, I feel like the two of them need to meet in the middle, that there needs to be some concessions made by the web app developers, but also I think Apple's got to do some things to make Safari on iOS a little bit more like the desktop version so that some of these web apps that people rely on can be used. I mean, I think a lot of the reviews you hear where people are like, oh, I can't get my work done on this, a lot of them are coming from tech reporters who use web apps for their CMS systems that just don't work in Safari on mobile, and that puts a bad taste in their mouth right out of the box.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can tell you now. I mean, we've got a fairly big issues list at work for our products, and at least 2 or 3 of those are specifically related to Safari on iOS because of either things that we didn't foresee or limitations of the browser because it doesn't quite behave like any other browser, even though it's it's fairly modern and it gets updated reasonably regularly. Right. So of course, if our primary audience was using an iPad in Safari, it would probably become number one priority. But that's not always the case. And I guess something like MailChimp or any of these other CMSs, that's probably not their main priority, and that's. But I guess what you'd also need is more people using the iPad to make that more of a priority. But until the stuff works, people aren't going to do it. So it's kind of this chicken and egg problem.
Yep, there's no doubt there's the chicken and egg problem. And Apple's not doing as much as I would hope they would do to push it forward in terms of moving their own pro apps to the iPad and just little things like keyboard shortcuts, which are starting to take off even without Apple's prodding, but a lot of Apple's apps don't do a very good job of implementing them, even though, they can be really handy. I mean, if you're using an iPad with a keyboard, it's nice to have keyboard shortcuts for most of the functionality.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely something, if I was using an iPad, that's definitely something that I'd want a lot of support for.
Right.
But, here we are. I'm still on my Mac. Like an old person. I'm not looking to the future.
Oh, well, maybe someday, Rob. You never know. Maybe someday.
Maybe.
All right, well, so what else should we talk about today? What else is on the agenda?
So I complained, I guess, maybe a little bit about Red Dead last week.
All right.
I was a little bit frustrated with, so I guess not last week.
Well, your special horse just jumped off a cliff, is what I remember.
Oh, don't! My next horse died as well.
No, you're not very good with animals, obviously.
No, I've kept my latest horse around quite a lot. Bandit, his name is her name. I apologize. This one's been around for a while, so that's good.
Good.
But yeah, the horse situation is a bit weird. Partly because at one point, my current horse, I was in a cutscene. And my horse just ran off a cliff behind me. Like, I watched it happen. I was like, well, there's nothing I can do because I'm in a cutscene.
Oh, no.
So, yeah, the horses can behave a little bit weird.
I think we need to point out that no real horses were actually harmed in the making of this podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, they're not real horses.
They're just digital horses.
And I legitimately felt quite sad when they died. So.
Okay.
But, yeah, I think I complained a little bit. I thought I felt it was a little bit slow getting into it. But now I've had I spent the whole weekend playing it, so I've done a good 20, 30, maybe 40 hours. It gets a lot better. I mean, I was like nearly in tears over the weekend. Like the story is so good, and you feel so invested.
Yeah, yeah, it does get a lot better.
I think it just took a little bit of time to get to that point.
Right. Yeah, it definitely takes its time getting going, which I think it. I suppose that's frustrating to some people, but I kind of like games like that as long as they don't get to the point where they're boring. And I haven't felt like Red Dead is boring. It's just takes its time.
Yeah, I think what the problem was I had in my head, I'd remember in the first one, and that was very much, here you go, you're a cowboy, let's go and shoot everybody we can find.
Right.
And it was a fairly short game. It was maybe like 15, 20 hours you could do the whole story in.
Yeah.
I mean, this one, I've been going God knows how many hours, and I think I've still got a fair bit of story left to go. But I think because I was thinking about the first one, I think I just expected to get straight back into that and just like do a lot of shooting. But like as you say, they kind of get you into it a bit more. But now I've played more and I'm further through the story. I'm absolutely loving it.
Yeah. So nobody should people should get off of Rob's back. That sounds like you heard from some people.
Yeah, I had some discussions with some people who were like, "You're wrong," and I was like, "Yeah, that's fine. I said it on the internet. You're entitled to tell me I'm wrong, I guess."
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it, especially since you basically bought a system for it.
Yeah, I not only bought a system but completely rearranged my game room. It is the spare room of our house that I share with Jess.
Yes, it's the room. If someone comes to visit you and they want to stay at your place, would they have to sleep inside the game room, or where is there an alternative?
That is where the only other bed in our house is in the game
room. I wasn't
room.
sure if there was still a bed in there. That's what I was hinting at.
There is a sofa that turns into a bed.
Okay.
So
tell me a little bit.
Tell
me a little bit about the game room, because you sent me some pictures and it looks pretty nice. You actually have some pretty serious cable management going here, and everything looks very orderly and organized.
Yeah, so I had a few consoles downstairs in the living room, but I decided, and I had some of the games down there for those consoles, and I just thought, to be honest, it would be a lot better if all of it was just in one place. So I've got like a nice sort of black and glass TV unit with, let me just get the picture up because I can't remember which consoles are actually on here. So we've got the PS2, PS3, PS4, N64, 360, and an Xbox One. So those are all hooked up. Oh, and the Apple TV as well is there. So yeah, those are all hooked up on the units, and then either side of that, I've got two big bookcases. One side has got mostly Microsoft games, and the other side has got all the PlayStation stuff.
All right. Yeah, you've got a lot of games here.
Yeah, I mean that is the sort of gift and curse of doing. I worked maybe a year in a secondhand game shop.
Oh, sure, right.
So I'd be taking in these games. People would come in and sell their games, and they'd never make it to the shelves because I was just spending like half my wages.
All the good ones were going straight into your pocket, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there'd be, if somebody came in with like a special edition, game or, a nice steelbook or something like that, I'd be like, even if they didn't want to buy it, I'd like, can you just buy it and I'll buy it off you? Because, I just ended up sort of collecting a lot of this stuff.
Looks like
it's slowed down a lot now.
Yeah.
But, I still pick up a few bits every now and again.
Looks like you have a lot of controllers there too.
Yeah, so most of the consoles I have at least two controllers. Mm-hmm. So what you can see on the wall there is I think that's probably mostly like one of each console there, and then the 4 N64 controllers, right? Because they're just a little bit harder to store because they're quite big. Right. And then I have a drawer that's got the extra controllers in as well.
All right. So for now, how are these all hooked up directly to your TV, or do you have to use some like HDMI switchers or other things? Because with 6 boxes here plus the Apple TV, that's a lot of inputs.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at the picture now. So the PS2 and the N64 go in with the SCART socket.
Right.
I have 2 of those on the back of my TV. And then 3 of the consoles are hooked up, plus the Apple TV, because I've got 4 HDMI ports.
Okay.
And because I've labeled all the cables with quite big labels behind the TV, so if I want to play like the PS3, I just switch it out with the Xbox One or something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's one thing I regret about my television in my basement, which is mainly a gaming rig, is that it only has a couple of HDMI inputs, and so I have a switcher, but they don't work that well, and it's just a little bit of a hassle. But if that's just another reason to eventually migrate to a 4K TV, is how I view it.
Well, the real problem is actually finding one that has more than like 1 or 2 HDMI ports. Because I think what's happened is the TV manufacturers have gone, why would you need ports? We've included our terrible Netflix app or our terrible Amazon Prime app with the software.
Right.
So they don't expect you to want to plug in, an Apple TV or, a TiVo or some alternative like that.
Right.
So you can find them with more ports, but you really have to dig around for it, because a lot of the places don't even tell you what ports come with a TV now.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, that's not good. Yeah, the one I got in part because it was like a closeout model or something, and one of the reasons it was cheaper was because it didn't have a fancy, smart TV system as part of it, and it didn't have many HDMI ports either. So it's super simple, but it's got a pretty good display on it. So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, it doesn't get, like I said, it doesn't really get used for anything much more than the PS4. And like when there's an Apple event, I'll usually watch it down here and type notes while I'm watching it. But that's about all it gets used for.
Yeah, I mean, the TV thing is such a pain. I mean, because I imagine this is what you want, and it's exactly what I want. I don't want the smart stuff built into my TV.
No, not really at all.
I'm quite capable of spending $100, $150 on an Apple TV, and I can use that theoretically forever on whatever TV I've got, as long as I can still plug it in. I don't need to pay extra for all of these ridiculous different smart solutions. I mean, the one on these TVs, the TV takes like 5 seconds just to boot.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know what it's doing, but it takes 5 seconds.
It's just got some really bad chips in it. Some probably like 5 year ago generation, Snapdragon chips or something.
Oh yeah, for sure. But other than the boot time, they're very good TVs. Like the display's really nice. It supports 4K HDR. We actually have the exact same TV in our living room as well, because I bought the first one and I was like, oh, this is great, and it was really cheap, so I just bought a second one.
I know. I'm trying to close my ears because I went pricing 4K TVs recently and realized they're a lot cheaper than I remember them being. I think the prices have just come down a lot over the last 2-3 years.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think even if you shop around it, like they're throwing in like Switches and Xbox One X's and all sorts of stuff with these TVs. If anything, I think they can't get rid of them fast enough.
Interesting. Yeah, I bought right before 4K was coming down in price, so I've got a 1080p TV upstairs that it's perfectly fine. It's one of those things where it's like I kind of wish it would just die, because then I had an excuse to buy a 4K TV, and I don't know what I'd do with it if I got a new one. I don't really have anywhere else in the house for it, so I think I'm just going to stick with that one. Though the basement is an option, because that TV's already kind of there for gaming. So a nicer TV down there would be kind of nice. It's just not the most comfortable part of the house to hang out. It's like people aren't going to go down to the basement to watch TV in our house. It's just not where people go.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense. I don't want to get down there. There's this guy who hangs out in there all day.
I know. As much as I like it and have made it my home, it's not for everyone.
And he sort of creeps into the rest of the house during the day when nobody else is around.
Yeah, I know. It's like, oh, no, there is somebody who lives there. We see him. He pokes his head up from his subterranean lair every so often. Okay, Rob. I noticed, I'm glad you put this in the show notes, because I noticed this the other day. I was like, all right, there he is. Rob's back on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm kind of back. I'm still looking at Mastodon as well.
Yeah. I noticed you're more replying to people than you are tweeting so far, because I did see you tweet a couple of times. I was like, oh, there's Rob. I haven't seen him in a while. And then I looked at your timeline. I was like, oh, he's replying to people still, mainly.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much what I've been doing. I've just been trying to just tweet less in some ways. I want to try and avoid the, just quote tweeting stuff just for the sake of it.
Yeah.
And just sort of, I don't want to just spread around all this anger because, things are not great right now in the news, just generally. Right. Not just in the US, but the UK and kind of everywhere else. Yep. So, everyone's pretty angry. So I'm just trying to sort of avoid adding to that anger from everyone.
Well, I think that's a good idea. I have noticed that many of the people who really left Twitter and didn't come and seemed like they weren't coming back, I have noticed more of them starting to come back all around the same time. Is there something about what's been going on over in Mastodon that led you to that, or is it just, I don't know, what kind of brought you back, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I know what you're referring to because it's the sort of the same group of us that were over on Mastodon have all sort of slowly come back to Twitter.
Right.
And I don't know. I'm not sure what it is. It's not that there's anything wrong with Mastodon. It does what it's supposed to do, but I think the biggest problem is the people who, like you, who have an audience because you write things and you want to share them. Mm-hmm. Or, people who make videos or whatever it happens to be, just anybody with sort of a large following. You can't just give that up. I mean, we discussed this before. We discussed this a few months ago.
Right.
And I think that was part of the problem. Like, a lot of people came over to Mastodon and was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna do all my posts over here now." And then everybody sort of disappeared after about 3 or 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of got really, really quiet over there.
Yeah. No, I noticed that. I've checked in once in a while, and I don't have any problem with Mastodon in general. I just don't. There's just not enough room in my life for yet another social network, and we talked about it before. It's not worth rehashing, but yeah, as a result, I've pretty much stayed in Twitter. Although I would say overall, I think I've tweet less now. Although it comes and goes in phases, depending on whether I'm busy or bored or whatever it happens to be. I still enjoy it, but I enjoy it through the lens of many, many, many complex mute filters.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I've taken your advice and blocked a few specific keywords. Mainly people running countries or organizing Brexits, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Brexit, obviously that does affect me and I do care about it, but
there are other.
I want to find out about it on my own terms.
Yes.
I don't need it thrown in my face all day long.
Yes. No, I get that too. I get you're just putting your head in the sand and ignoring the news. It's like, no, I'm ignoring the news on Twitter, which is what I'm not there for. So, yeah, there's other ways to get that information, and you don't have, just because you're not looking at it on Twitter doesn't mean you don't care.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I'd rather tweet less and tweet less angry things. If I am angry about some politics thing, or there's been a Brexit announcement tonight which I haven't looked at, I'm sure it's not going to be great. Right. But I don't need, and presumably the people that follow me don't need, me getting angry about Brexit for them to get angry about it, for them to then retweet it, or they go and look at the article and then everyone's getting angry. Like, I think we could all just tweet nice things, or let's just not bother, because it just kind of makes Twitter a lot better.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely something that I try to do as well. Well, what I'm going to do after we finish recording is I'm going over to the Apple Store, because I'm going to test out this new thing that would probably be good if you lived in California right now, because it can detect pollution levels as you walk around throughout the day. And of course, in California, there's a lot of smoke these days.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously that's not great, and I guess something like this would be really useful to get like a real sort of air quality index for exactly where you are.
Yeah.
But this is an interesting little device. What is it called? My Skin Track.
It's a terrible.
Because that sounds something you should go to the
My
doctors
Skin
for.
Track UV, which is a terrible name because it doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, and it does more than just, as you can expect from the name, it will detect UV levels, ultraviolet light levels, and so that, but it does more than that. It also detects pollution, pollen, and humidity, and it's just like this clip that goes on you can put on your clothes or a bag or whatever, anything you carry with you that is exposed to the outside, so the sun can see it, and it runs off of solar power, which is nice because you don't have to charge it. And it communicates with your iPhone or an Android phone using NFC. Now, it's strange to me that this is Android compatible, only because if you read the press release, it also says available only at the Apple Store, which, I'm sure that that's a limited time thing. But I was like, really? If you own an Android phone, you have to schlep over to have to go over to the Apple Store to get this thing and use it with your Samsung phone? I guess so. There's no reason, it's not like they stop Android users at the door and shame them. But still, you would think that they would, sell it at Best Buy or, I don't know, some other general electronics store. But yeah, that's, it's made by La Roche Posay, maybe, I don't know. It's they give you.
I'll take your word. Yeah, that sounds about right.
There's a companion app that gives you skincare recommendations. I think it's the company that makes like L'Oreal. It's it's like lotions and skin care products and makeup and things like that. It developed it, and I caught my eye this morning on Apple News of all places, and I thought I would, after just doing a short news story about it on Mac Stories, seeing that it was already available, I'm going to do an in-store pickup and pick it up and do a little review, because it seems it's one of those things that I think, like as with fitness and food trackers and all that kind of stuff, one way I think that those kind of devices help is that they make you aware of the issue more than they necessarily, I don't know how much actionable data there is. It's like if you have to go out in the sun, you're going to be out in the sun one way or the other, but now you're reminded that maybe you should put sunblock on, right? If you're going to be out for a long time during the day.
Sure.
Or, you may still have to go to work, but there's pollution in the air, and maybe you think to yourself, well, maybe I should see if the pollution levels are better in the evening, and then I'll go for a walk in the evening instead of at my lunch hour, or I don't know, it's stuff like that. But I think sometimes just the awareness of the conditions is a helpful thing to get people to either alter their behavior or find ways to just be a little more healthy. So I thought I would give it a try, and I don't know, I got to give it, I'm going to go out for a walk this afternoon, see how the sun is. I suspect the sun is not going to kill me in November in Chicago. It is sunny today, but boy, is it cold.
Yeah. I was just realized, I was just reading the article that you put up on Mac Stories. This thing is 12 millimeters wide and 6 mil high.
It's super
I
tiny.
imagined this to be like a large thing. I thought this was like the size of an apple box or something on a big clip.
Yeah, you can't tell from this photo, but it's like the size of a paper clip, basically. I think, and it's really tiny, because there was another picture I probably should have included in this story too, of a guy with it clipped to his polo shirt, and it really is just super tiny. And they even suggest you can clip it to a watch strap or to sunglasses. It can go just about anywhere, I think. Or, you can put it on a backpack or a handbag, or I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, I've just seen it. They even have a picture of somebody wearing it as a necklace.
Yeah.
Just around a necklace chain. And God, yeah, this is really small. I don't think this is available in the UK, because I don't need this information. I definitely don't. But I kind of want
that.
Like it.
You and I are very similar, because I was like, well, this is really cool. Look how small it is. And it works with solar power. Wow. And NFC. Yeah, I got excited, mainly because of what it is and not necessarily whether I need it. I guess the one thing that makes it, there is one trade-off, because it's NFC. And so you don't have to charge it, but you do have to open the app and scan it to get the data off of it. And I think it can hold quite a bit of data on it. It's just that you have to do that once in a while. I think it can actually hold up to 3 months. I want to say that I read somewhere. It's got a pretty good FAQ on the webpage, so you don't have to do it constantly. But obviously, for the information to be usable for you on on some kind of real time basis, you would want to scan it at some point during your day, not just wait 3 months. But yeah, it's I don't know. I thought it was one of the more different wearable type things that I've seen in a while, and I thought it was a cool idea, so I want to give it a try.
Yeah, I just checked a couple of things. Yes, it is L'Oreal, the company.
Yeah.
They also don't have it in the UK right now.
Yeah. One thing I don't like is when people do press releases. I get grief sometimes from people saying, "Well, why did this isn't available in Europe? Why didn't you say that?" And I was like, "Well, because I don't know." Because a lot of times companies don't say. You know what I mean? I mean, it's usually a given. It seems like usually it's a given that it's in the U.S. Although maybe that's a little too presumptive of me. But when you see one of those things, it's sometimes very hard to tell what countries it's available in.
Oh yeah, I mean for sure. I've seen stuff like this is a perfect example. Like I'm looking on the website and they're like, pick it up at any Apple store, and it's like, well, you mean any Apple store in the US,
right?
And that's fine. It's a US company. I kind of get that, but
I'm not sure it is.
I feel like
it
the
might
problem
be
is with. Oh, okay. Yeah, that actually would make a lot of sense. But I guess in some ways I think it's very, very different because it's like Apple related, because Apple generally is a worldwide brand. They release something and generally you're going to be able to get that in your country within 3 months or something at the most. Not every country, but a large portion of countries. Whereas I think you look at something like the Echo, where it was in the US for a long time and then it's finally came to like Canada and the UK, and you think, well, you'd assume generally that it's going to be available in places like Canada, the UK, Australia. But
right.
I think with Apple, they're a lot better at doing that, whereas a lot of other companies aren't.
Right.
And I think maybe that's where some of the sort of, as you say, like comments from people like, why didn't you mention this? Because, like you say, you're just not going to know.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't always know. I mean, and usually Apple is pretty good about some of that stuff, at least with their own products. Because, like, for instance, I know I think I heard this when I was listening to Upgrade the other day with Jason Snell and Mike Hurley, that the rumors are that the Apple video streaming service is going to be available in like 100 countries when it launches, or rolled out in a very short period of time to 100 countries, which is really kind of, I guess we kind of take it for granted with a lot of Apple stuff that, like when Apple Music came out, I know that it wasn't everywhere initially, but compared to something like you said, like the Echo, it's global very quickly, because like the Echo is still struggling to be. I think the Echo, what is it? It's maybe in a dozen countries at this point. Maybe. I mean, it's not across Europe. I know. I think it made it to Germany eventually, and Italy, and I forget where else. But
even some of the new stuff that they've released isn't available in the UK.
Right.
It's like they start the process again every time they come up with a new Echo product. It starts in the US again, and then it'll eventually roll out everywhere else.
You would think that they would get that down, right? I mean, there's obviously a lot of complex issues to deal with when you're talking about regulated products that are regulated by different countries with different laws. But, if that's your job, if that's your business is to make those things, you'd think you'd get that figured out, especially for the bigger markets. But that's one thing where Amazon doesn't seem to get it.
It's only Amazon. They're a little company. Give them time.
They'll figure it out eventually. Yeah. Well, you know what? But pretty soon we'll be talking about Black Friday deals. Is your wallet ready?
Oh, my wallet's ready. I need some Wi-Fi stuff.
Oh, all right.
And you know how expensive that
I've got a promo code for you for the Eero. Is that in the UK? That's a good question. That wasn't in the UK.
No, it's not. I wish it was.
Oh, I thought it was. I think it's coming. I think I read somewhere that it's coming soon.
I am Googling it right now.
The Orbi, I think, is... I know the Orbi's in Italy, so I bet it's in the UK.
The Orbi's in the UK.
Yeah, the Orbi's very good.
That is... Oh, hang on.
Is it...
Eero Home... What? Oh, no, this is a third-party seller.
Oh.
This isn't... It's going to take 3 weeks to get here. I think this is somebody shipping Eeros from the US.
and then throwing an adapter in the box for the plug.
Oh my god, and it's also £700. Yeah, this is definitely a third-party seller.
Euros aren't cheap, but they're not that much.
No. No, the Netgear Orbi is what I've got my eye on.
Yeah, I think Federico ended up getting that. I like it. I mean, I've got that and an Euro, so I've got all my bases covered.
Yeah, I've got like 3 or 4 different versions on my wish list, so I can keep an eye and see which ones come discounted or not.
It's a good idea. I'm hoping I already got like a pre Black Friday game deal. I got Dark Souls for the Switch for I think $27. You know, it's a $40 game.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
That's
that
good.
was a good deal for a new game. So you know,
Yeah, I'm sure I'll try and pick up some cat food,
yeah.
as is tradition.
Don't give away the punchline for the next episode. All right. Well, that's cool.
Oh,
That's cool. I like that.
Cool. Well, should we wrap it up?
Yeah,
then?
I think so.
Cool. Okay. Well, show notes. I think this is episode 75.
Oh, hey,
We are
3/4 of the way to 100.
3/4. Yeah, there we go. Yes, this is episode 75.
Nice.
That's a lot of episodes.
Yeah, that's a lot of talking. All right. Well, yeah, we'll talk to everybody in a couple of weeks. And yeah, you can find us both on Twitter. Rob doesn't promise to tweet anything but nice things to you, which is unfortunate. But if you want somebody to get irascible and mean, you can maybe tweet at me. And
yeah, just get you riled up on a good day. And
every now and then I do get a little riled up, and you'll find me. Sometimes I can't hold back. Mostly I just ignore the haters, though. All right, Rob. Well, I guess I'll talk to you soon then.
All right, speak to you later.
Bye.